Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Raising Your Gifted Children right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my guest today is Ashley Belote, and we're going to be talking about children's books, which I love to talk about children's books. Children learn so much from a story. Reading to your children from the moment they're born gives them a love of being able to sit still, listen to a story, find themselves in a story, and really kind of discover who they are through that story. It's also a wonderful way to connect as a parent, as a teacher, as a grandparent with your child, but it also teaches them the love of storytelling, of reading, touching an actual book, and really kind of just immersing themselves into the wonderment of life and what is possible. We're going to be talking about the Me Tree, and she's got a whole load of other books here that we're going to be talking about as well. She's an illustrator and lots of beautiful illustrations here. She studied traditional animation under the director of Don Bluth. She earned her BA from Anderson Broaddus University and her MA in Arts and Administration at the University of Kentucky. Her graduate study included children's literature and illustration course. The whole book approach through Simmons College at the Eric Carle Museum of the Picture Book Art. She also serves as an illustrator coordinator for the Carolinas chapter, and she's represented by Mo Farrell of Bookends Literary Agency. Well, what is the Me Tree? This is the book we're going to be approaching at this very moment. The bear just wants to have a tree to himself, don't we all? He didn't want roommates. He didn't want guests. No, just sweet solitude. So he packs up his things, finds a great listing for a spacious tree and moves in. At first, it's perfect, just what he wanted. But he soon realizes the tree might not just be for him. In fact, there seems to be quite a few residents in this tree. Will the bear learn how to share the tree? Welcome to the show, Ashley.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. It's an honor to be here.
Great to have you here. Yeah, will the bear share the tree? You know, I totally relate. Solitude, a space of your own. And the next thing you know, hello, where did you come from?
That is exactly the sentiment that is kind of portrayed throughout the entire story. Like you said, Bear just wants to be alone. He is tired of living in his squished cave with all the other bears. So he buys a tree house so that he can be all alone. But like you said, as he moved in, he learns that there are maybe a few critters who already live there. And there's some squirrels. There's a sloth who takes too long in the bathroom. There are some beavers. There are goats who is interrupting his yoga time, all the way up to a giraffe. Poor Bear. Yeah, it was so fun to work on this story because there's so many different animals to draw. I am a huge fan of giving animals human-like characteristics.
Oh, yes.
So drawing anthropomorphic animals and making them have these funny expressions and just to kind of put them into these funny, awkward, silly situations. And with the Me Tree, I got that opportunity for like 12 to 13 different animals. So there's a lot packed in there.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. We don't realize, I mean, I have a 1-year-old grandson, and they've been reading to him almost since the day he was born. And, you know, very often, you know, he closes the book as you're reading it. And other times he just sits there and he's immersed. And my son-in-law got this perfect picture with the lighting all around him, looking like he's immersed in the book. And he was 9 months old. Of course, that was only a quick snapshot because the next moment he's tossing the book, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But he loves, you know, then he goes and picks a book and, you know, wants that story time. And just people think, well, they're too young, they can't take it in, but they're never too young, are they? Because you're instilling in them, it's also the way you read it. You know, read it graphically, read it rhythmically, invite them in, because that is really such an essential foundation to opening up their imagination for life.
Oh, yeah, it really is. You know, as an author illustrator, I have the privilege of being a child's first introduction into art and into literacy. You know, I am providing these materials for them to kind of be immersed in this imaginative world.
Mm.
And for me personally, my brand is very much based on humor. I love to laugh. I love making people laugh. I love making children laugh in particular. So a lot of what I focus on is the funny situations in books. And when you get that little spark or that little grin from a kid who is oftentimes shy or reserved, you know, it's allowing them to open up through this story that they're sharing with you or with a class, with a teacher, anybody. And, you know, you're right. There is nothing like that experience of reading one-on-one with a little one and seeing their imagination spark, because inevitably the book that you're reading is going to give them thoughts and ideas, and they're going to want to tell you about those things and make up their own stories with the same characters. And it's a great kind of springboard for a kid's imagination. And you definitely can't get that same type of experience looking at like the digital form of a book. You know, there's, you know, great things about digital books and everything like that, but to hold it in your hands with a kid on your lap and let them touch the pages. And one of my favorite things to do as an illustrator is to hide like itty bitty teeny tiny details throughout the images so that you might notice something like halfway through the book that will make you then want to go back to the beginning and search and find those little things. I loved doing that when I was a kid. Those are the types of books that I grew up reading and loving the most. So when I got the opportunity to start creating my own books, that's definitely something that I wanted to do, just if nothing else, to elongate the experience that the kid has with the book.
Oh God, yes. I mean, this is the impact that a book has, is that we were at a secondhand store buying some toys for my grandson, my daughter and I, and this kid had thrown this book on the floor and then left, and I picked it up and I thought, I remember this book. We had it when the kids were young, and it's So I'll Love You Forever. I don't know if you remember that book.
Yes, yes.
And I picked it and bought it. When we brought it home, my daughter said, oh, I love this book. And sorry, I have no idea where that is coming from in here. Sorry about that interruption, folks. It actually was the daughter with FaceTime her grandson. But anyway, her husband had never, ever read this book. And so she was reading it to him. And she couldn't get to the end without crying. He had to pick it up and finish it up and read it himself, because it's, if you've never read it, folks, I don't care what age you are, it is a beautiful book of loving you forever, and how the tables turn. And me being 67 on that end now, you know, I'm heading that way, you know, where you kind of become the child that they're looking after. And she hadn't read that book probably in 20 something years, easily. And yet it still brought such emotion back to her that she couldn't even finish reading it to her husband for the tears. And the tears of just such, you know, meaning. And that's the impact that a book can have, isn't it? It really is. And we don't know the impact until something comes up where it reminds us of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. There is nothing like the memory of a book. Everybody who you meet, if you ask, oh, what was your favorite book when you were a kid? The majority of people are going to have an answer.
Yeah.
And it's not like you can do that with everything, because there is definitely going to be, you know, one or two that really stick out in your mind. And it's oftentimes, yes, it is the book, but a lot of times it's the experience around the book that gives you that kind of nostalgia and makes you love the book even more. And I know for me personally, The Jolly Christmas Postman is a fantastic book, and my mom and I still read that together every Christmas Eve to this day. And I'm not a kid anymore, but we love that book. And those are the type of images where you can go back and search and find little things that you might have missed. But it's, you know, it's that traditional aspect of it too, where it's something special that we save for that one day every year. And there's tons of stories out there like that are related to books. So it's a really special industry to be in on my part.
Oh God, yeah. You know, for me growing up, it was the famous five. You know, I'm from England, and the famous five, they got into mysteries. And I still to this day love a mystery, love a thriller, love a whodunit, you know. And I think probably it stemmed from that, because they were always investigating something, and what, you know, what would it lead them to? And I found myself utterly intrigued, you know. And I think that sparked that intrigue to look at life differently, right? And this is the thing, what we don't realize is that these stories, however entertaining they are in the moment and however emotion that they provoke in the moment, they are going into that subconscious, and they are sitting there waiting to be ignited in real life. And, you know, from the stories, you know, what would Mr. Plods do? You know, what would Biggie Ears do? And all of my kids had book themes. My oldest daughter had Beatrice Potter.
Oh, yes.
And my son had Rupert Bear, which is not so big here, but, you know, Rupert Bear and his adventures. And then my youngest daughter had kind of the Disney, you know, the Beauty and the Beast and yes, those, right? But they always had kind of these book themes. And I grew up with Diana and all of those type of things. And it just, I think it's almost a guidance system to life.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it definitely is. I 100% agree, because they can teach kids lessons, they can provide entertainment, they can help a kid deal with a really tough situation. You know, there are picture books out there that talk about, you know, losing somebody important to you. Yes. There's books that talk about the loss of a pet, being bullied at school, not fitting in. There is a book out there for every type of situation. And what it does is it provides a child who is going through whatever the situation is with an identifiable character that is going through the same thing. Yes. And they can see themselves in that role. And obviously, you know, a book has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So we have the problem, but then we have the magic solution. Yes. And it is seriously like a guide to life almost. And again, it is so special to be in this business, because we can use our past experiences as inspiration for stories and kind of talk about what we went through and how we solved our own problems that can then, you know, potentially help somebody else who's going through something similar.
Kind of one of my favorite books that was actually it's a small book. It's Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. And it's a metaphoric book of two mice, two men around abundance of cheese. And it's the reaction when the cheese is gone. And I'm a true colors coach. So of course it immediately kind of, you know, connected with me in the sense of the personality traits that we have and how we interact and how we see life. And then later on, they came out with a child's version of this, illustrated, a beautiful big book. And it's so perfect, because really what he's talking about is our approach to change. Change is inevitable. Change is going to happen forever in our life. That life is not meant to stand still. We grow through change. And the adult book, I don't know how many people I've interviewed. Yes, I've read that, you know, and it had an impact on me. But then to then put it in that child's book in a beautiful illustrated way, because how many kids, especially today, we've just had 2.5 years of COVID. Now there's a war over there. Now there's economic strife over here. And then there's avian flu. I mean, God, when you name it, there's always something out there. And if kids can learn how to adapt to the changes, we're giving them a skill that is lifelong. And through those books, through the storytelling of how to adapt, how to adjust, when, you know, how to listen to your own instincts, right? So very important. These are skills that we're putting in their backpack that can travel with them for life.
Oh, yes, absolutely. It's something that, again, they teach with an air of entertainment. So it's not like they're forced to learn something, and it does it in such a subtle way. And when you're writing a picture book, something that is extremely important when you're, you know, doing the grunt work and writing the revisions and everything is the humor. You have to balance the humor with the heart.
Yes.
And you have to show the growth of a character. So just like you were saying, when a child reads it and they learn to grow, they themselves grow, they learn that the character has changed. It is all helping them kind of develop the skills that they can use when they start school, or if they, are already in school. It will help them to kind of adapt to these changing social situations that will then kind of translate to the bigger situations that you're faced with as you get older and grow in life. So yeah, they can satisfy multiple audiences, and there's a book out there for everything.
I also think that for the person reading the book to the child, it brings out their inner child, right? And it is a reminder that don't leave your child behind. Just because you're a responsible adult now, don't leave that child behind. And I think one of the most beautiful things of becoming a parent is to learn how to be a child again.
Oh, yes. Yes. Right? I totally agree. And I feel like I don't have children yet, but I feel like I kind of tap into that side of myself when I'm working, and I work all the time. So I feel that like I'm very much still like between 6 and 7, because I find the same things that a 6 to 7-year-old finds funny right now. So I have a 4-year-old niece, and we have a ton of stuff in common. I love hanging out with her. She is great. We are on the same level. But yeah, like that's the other reason that I love my job so much, is because I get to kind of revert back to that point. Because when you're writing or illustrating or making a book for a child, your audience is significantly different from you, how you are right now. And you can't write in a way that would make sense to you. You have to write or illustrate in a way that would make sense to them. And there is nothing more lovely than spending time in that mindset and just like cracking up at these funny 4 to 6-year-old jokes. It's
allowing your inner child to come out. I have a series and a book series that's going to be coming out, contributing artists to it, and it's the Forgotten Children series. And it is, we have left our children behind, educationally, emotionally, spiritually. We don't listen to them. We don't give them a voice until they're an adult, and by that time they're so goddamn confused. They become the dysfunctional society. So if we invest in our children when they're young and help them to have a voice, and I think through reading, through storytelling, even if they watch a movie, right? Sometimes there's a correlating book, which I think is wonderful, because now you can go to the book and go more in depth. What did that mean? How did you feel when that happened? And start allowing a child to bring out their emotions, because this whole thing of children should be seen and not heard, it wasn't so long ago. And, in a lot of ways, we're still practicing that, child too young to have an opinion, too young to have a voice. No, they have a voice, they have an opinion, obviously based on their age, and also how free they feel to speak. But the more we can invite that dialogue with our children, the more we can navigate or guide them on their own journey of life, instead of dictating what their life should be.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that the growth of the picture book industry is a nice indicator that they are being more respected, because we're making content for them. And when you make a picture book, it's very interesting, because yes, you have to write and illustrate something that will appeal to a child, but it also has to appeal to an adult, because that's who's purchasing the book and who's ultimately going to allow the child to read it. So
read it to the child 100 times. They've got to enjoy it too.
Yes, that is the goal. That is every creator's goal right there. Yeah. So it is extremely important to have all of these different subjects, because like we were talking about, everybody's going through something different.
Yes.
So whenever you create something that can satisfy these multiple audiences, that's a huge win. Absolutely.
Have you seen the documentary on how Sesame Street came about?
I have.
Isn't it fantastic?
Yes.
And really eye-opening.
It is very inspirational too. I think that perseverance has a lot to do with things starting small that then become big and impactful and influential. And with picture books, this is it's a hard industry. There's a lot of competition, like everything else.
Yep.
So you have to stand up and stand out. And I think that, learning about stories like that shows like these success stories and how much work went into prior to it becoming big. I think everybody should watch something like that.
I 100% agree. And I recommend it to a lot of people I actually interview, because the philosophy behind it.
Yeah.
Let's put it on the street. where
Mhm.
people live, where the diversity is, where
Yes.
people gather, where
Yes.
people are coming to and fro. And I loved the whole process of how it all came about, and how it evolved and what it has become today. And it's
Yeah.
over 50 years now, and it's still an institution that is so utterly respected and regarded as an educational, supportive, liberating force for children and parents. So look at that impact. That is what that TV show did. But as I said, my daughter, oh God, it has to be at least 25 or more years. She's 33 now, so I can't remember the last time she read that book. But look at the memory of that book and the impact it had on her,
Right.
right? So this
Mhm.
is the thing, we don't realize the impact we're having on them when they're young.
Right.
Through what they watch, which is, yes, there's a lot of great TV shows out there for children, but we
Yes.
still got to be mindful.
Oh,
We've got to be
absolutely.
mindful, right? And
Yes.
you find an adult watching, especially you hear celebrity dads, yes, I've just watched Frozen for the 1500th time. And there's these fantastic videos of dads in the car singing Frozen, or singing along with their children and totally immersing themselves in. And really, I'm doing it for my kids. No, they're not. They're doing it for the inner kid.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Totally true. And again, adults buy books that they think, oh yeah, my 3-year-old would love this, and they
Yeah.
take it home and they look at it. Absolutely, they do. I have a huge collection of picture books, and I don't have any kids. I just like them.
Yes.
Like I have never been a big reader of like novels and things like that. I love to listen to audiobooks. But as far as like the reading content, I have always just really liked picture books. Like
Mhm.
every time that I would get a choice of like a book, I would always pick a picture book or, something for little kids. So it's something that is driven by passion, and a
Mm.
lot like Sesame Street, it's definitely from that inner place of creativity just wanting to come out, and it's lovely when it happens.
Yeah. And when it has a message, that's the thing,
Yes.
is that, like the bear wanted solitude. Do
Mhm.
we relate? Yes. It doesn't matter
Yes.
what age you are, right? And
Right.
then to find out that really you've got to share, and everybody's
Yes.
got to, participate here. And
Mhm.
that is such a lesson in life
It
and
is.
also sometimes we think we want the solitude, only to find we actually really enjoy the company.
Oh, something similar to what Bear learns in the meat tree. Absolutely.
And it's only through the storytelling that we look at it. It's me doing these shows. It's somebody will say something that I relate to. Oh, okay. Now I know why I see things that way, where
Yes.
it's coming from. And that's what a good book will do. Having the pictures there, like my son was a Rupert Bear because my son had this really big head, little body, and the whole adventures that Rupert Bear went on, right? And it's a yeah, I have to say, I had the guilty pleasure of reading them to him before he kind of caught on to them. But it
Uh-huh.
is the kids used to put on plays for us,
Yes.
and either do it on their own, or my friends would come over with their children, and the children would just go off into the clothing box and come out and put on this entire performance for us,
Yeah.
right? And just make us laugh, and it'd be kind of a silly type show. Sometimes it would surprise us, but that imagination came from somewhere,
Oh, yes.
and it came from those books being read to. And what I also used to do with the kids, is I used to tell them stories at the end of the day of adventures, but they were the key characters,
Oh, gotcha.
right? So they were the hero, they were this, they were that in the story. So they kind of went to bed knowing they were a part of a story.
Yes.
So,
I love that.
but that they want to be a part of the story. They want to
Yeah.
be the bear. They want to be the giraffe. They want to be these things. They want to identify with someone, because we
Yes.
all do, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that's the other thing that is being pushed for in picture books right now is diversity, because
Yes.
every child deserves to see themselves in a picture book. There is no excuse. Like everybody needs to see themselves represented. And so whenever I'm working on a book with kids in it, I make sure to include
Mm.
diverse spreads, because that is, we are
That's
meant to depict our world. And that's what
exactly.
our world is. It is
Yes.
so beautiful and diverse, and everybody's different. And so, and that's fun. And with the me tree, it's all animals, but all the animals are different
Mm.
and end up living together despite the fact that none of them match.
Right.
And I think that's a nice message too, because I know for me personally, I grew up in a very small family where we didn't have a ton of family around us. But my parents had a lot of really close friends who were my like pseudo aunts and uncles.
Yes.
And so I grew up, calling them aunt and uncle, and never even thought that they weren't actually related to
Mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
So we had this like big extended family of friends who were just as much family as our actual blood
Yes.
related family was. And I think that that's a good message for people, because a family can look like however you want it to.
Well, I had exactly the same thing because I immigrated here to Canada and I didn't have any family. And
Mm,
so when my son was 7 weeks old, he was my second child, I met somebody who lived across the street and we became besties. We still are,
yeah. Oh,
nearly 40 years later. And our three kids, each other's weddings, bridesmaids and this and that, and they are the cousins.
yeah.
And even
Oh,
though, my kids have cousins on their father's side, nowhere near, the brother sisterhood that they have,
right.
and
Oh, for sure.
that has gone beyond the parents. They've maintained this relationship because they're family. And
Right.
that's the important thing, I think, for people to understand, especially as people move away from family,
Mhm.
move to different places. Family is what you make it, right?
It is.
How
Yes.
you bring people in, and
Yeah,
I think that's a very important thing to illustrate in a book, so people don't get stuck on it's only blood family.
exactly. Yeah. I know where I live right now, we have some family near us, but it's my friends who are right here in the same
Mm.
city who I depend on first, because I know that they'll come save me, they'll come rescue me. They're here. And I think that that's a nice message too, in light of what's happened in the past couple of years,
Yes.
because a lot of us haven't been able to go visit our families who are far away. So we've had to kind of restructure our relationships with people nearer to us. And so I think it's very timely for that. And, going forward now, we've got this whole new group of people to rope into our ever growing family. So
Right. Yeah.
it's a wonderful process.
I think also, I'm not the traditional grandma. I don't have the grandma's house that everybody comes to.
Mhm.
I'm the mom with the traveling bag. I'm,
Yeah.
last week over visiting my other two children on the mainland, and this weekend I'm down visiting my daughter and grandson. So I'm the one perpetually, living out of the bag, seeing everyone,
Yeah.
because even if I did have the home, it's harder for them to travel with
Right.
kids and work. And it's easier for me to travel. Well, my work's on the computer, pick up the computer and go, right? So,
That's it.
we're changing the dynamics of what a traditional family is.
Right.
And the more that we just look at that and go, it's okay. It's
Mhm.
okay. It doesn't have to be. We can still make it absolutely wonderful. That choice is ours.
It is. Yes, it is. And you brought up an interesting point there too, being able to work remote now.
Mm.
There's a lot of people who have not gone back to the office.
Mhm.
And I have always worked from home. My mom, I grew up, with her having her own business. So she worked from home, and I've always loved that dynamic.
Yes.
And so I'm super excited for when I have kids, because then I can kind of do that same
Yeah.
thing. And I really can, like you, I can pick up my computer, my iPad, and I can, illustrate on the road, and
Yes.
just kind of go anywhere. And, now after, having come through COVID and everything, and people learning how much you actually can do outside of an office, it really has changed the world.
Yeah, it has. And I think children's books have changed the world, not only by the content. You were talking about representation of color. And I have a wonderful woman who's been on 2 or 3 times, and she wrote a book, Laurie Leaks Goes on an Adventure. And she's a woman of color. And she said there were no books representing me out there.
Mhm.
And so Laurie Leaks went to Paris with her fathers, went to Copenhagen. They're about to go somewhere else. And it's the adventures this child has, which shows other children of color that they don't have to just stay home, that yes, they're welcome around the world. They too can spread their wings. And the more they see that representation, the more they believe, well, I can.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And not just the diversity fact, but that you as a kid can see kids in books having adventures gives you the idea that you can do and you can have an adventure too. There is a whole big world out there, and it's
Yes.
really hard to understand when you go to school and come home and you go to school and come home.
Yeah.
It's extreme. And like you watch TV and you see other places, but it's not the same as like using your imagination
Yeah.
to see to project yourself into these adventures that you can see in books. And so in my opinion, it really does open up the world to kids in so many ways.
And again, to the parents reading them,
Oh,
brings
yes.
out the inner child, but I think it also in seeing the reaction of the child.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the intrigue or the investment in it, and it's like,
Yes.
this really got the child's attention. My son-in-law is I think it's a cosplayer or whatever, but anyway, he's not an actor, but so when he reads, even little Rowan at 1 month old, he'll be reading in character.
Oh,
Right.
absolutely.
And so,
Yes.
you're wondering who's really enjoying the story.
Yes.
Because
It is the adult.
he's
Yes.
all the parts, and you find yourself sitting there just watching him enjoying it, And so it's like, no, it's not my mum's cooking he's reading, because we're all busy listening to the story too and totally immersed in it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
again, it is good to bring out our inner child, but I also think that there's so many lessons we've forgotten as adults,
Mm-hmm.
that when you read them again in the children's books, it brings you back. It brings you back to something. You know what? I lost my wonderment. I
Mm-hmm.
lost my joy of exploration.
Mm-hmm.
I lost me along the way. And this is an opportunity for me to find me alongside my child.
Oh, yeah. And there's nothing more special than that, because you get to be kind of a peer with the child and kind of see it from that perspective. And that's why as a creator, if I am able to allow an adult and a child to sit down and kind of leave the current world behind and just immerse themselves for the time span of 32 to 40 pages into a world together where only they exist with these characters, then I have done my job. Plus, if there's an opportunity to get a laugh in there, I'll take it every time. But
Oh God.
oh yeah.
I mean, laughter is just so important, even at the sad things.
Oh, it is. Yes.
And oh no, that's disrespectful. No, it isn't. It's a coping mechanism. It's lightening something up.
Yes.
When you're at a wake or a funeral, we don't want it to be all doom and gloom and sadness. I've made instructions in my will that it better not be. I want to go out with a bang and a party. Remember all the idiocy of me. You're quite happy to tell me in life, so yeah, you can tell me on my way out too. And I think we've got to this thing about, no, we should be so serious, it's disrespectful to laugh. No, it isn't. Not at the right time and for the right reason. And humor is such a beautiful coping mechanism. It's such a way of releasing, but also of connecting. There was a guy that did a video on a YouTube where he was watching his phone and he was just laughing. And then somebody's filming around him and everybody starts laughing with them. They have no idea what he's laughing at. But now people are laughing at him. Next thing you know, you've got a whole train laughing.
Oh, it's wonderful.
And then how contagious that is. What does that laughing do for us? It gives so many endorphins off. It is such a stress reliever. It is a wonderful thing just to get out those giggles and just afterwards. It is so healthy for us.
It is. And humor in general can be very comforting, because a lot of the times you're introduced to these funny things, in happy times in your life. So when you see them again, whether it's a funny TV show or a funny book, you remember how you felt then, and it instantly lightens your mood. I remember my first day of college, that's a stressful kind of nerve-wracking time. And I had 2 classes in the morning, and then I had like a 2-hour break which I got back to my room and I was like, well, this is amazing. What am I supposed to do now?
You're right.
So yeah. So, but the stress level is high. Everything's new. Everything's changing and it's different. So I turned on one of my favorite shows that I used to watch with my mom all the time. And I was instantly fine because I was laughing at those same jokes that I had heard hundreds of times before.
Yes.
And
it's comforting.
It is. It's
Yes.
comforting. And picture books do that same thing.
Yeah, they do. I mean, little one has got a huge library of books already, which you can never have enough, right?
No, definitely
but
not.
Again, as I said, I don't think it's just for the child. I think it's for the adult reading them. And then later on, when the child gets to being able to read it to you,
Oh, yes. Oh,
that is a totally different thing. Now the child has stepped into the characters and they're reading it to you. And, and you want to give your response to the same way that they gave to you. And I think it's such a kind of a proud moment when the kid can turn around and now read to you, right? And it's a wonderful downtime. It's a wonderful time of being still. It's a wonderful time of allowing the mind to go traveling. It's a wonderful time to redirect from something that might be either painful. I was a very sickly child, so in bed a great deal. So storytelling was a way of me escaping that imprisonment that very often it felt like, right? And that storytelling is, I think, is just a wonderful centerizing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, right? It most definitely is. And it can allow you to calm down. It can allow you to kind of rethink what's happening around you. It just allows you to reset yourself. And I mean, yes, mentally, but also physically.
Yes.
I think, because it does, like you said, it forces you to be still. And in this fast-paced world, kids are just as busy as adults because they go to school, they go to practice, they go to after school care, they go home, they eat dinner, and they go to bed. There's so many things that they have to do throughout the day. And it's hard when you are constantly on the go because you're thinking like, yes, you're doing something right now, but you're thinking about what you have to do next.
Yes.
And when you read, you just sit there.
And you're in the moment.
Yes.
Yes, you're present. That's the beauty of it.
Yes.
I do my own shows every week, Sarah's View of Life. And last week it is like, why are we not basically paying attention? Why are we not reading or listening? And, I've seen so much evidence of people saying, yeah, but where is the information? I can't see it. Just stop a moment and read what's in front of you.
Right.
Everything you need is there, but you're so busy skimming because you're busy going on to the next. And this is why half the time we're chasing our tails, getting nowhere, because we're in a rush going nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
Because we haven't centered anything. We haven't got a path that we're on, and we're not paying attention to the gift of the present.
Right.
Right. And that's one thing books do. They send you. I'm a funny person when I read a book. Leave me alone. Like with the Harry Potter books, my kids go, oh, not again, be no supper. Mom's in the Harry Potter books, order pizza, I'm the nerd in it. And when I read, I like to kind of read a book until I'm finished. I'm lost in it, completely. And then a good book to me is one that stays. I'm constantly thinking about it. My brother is an author and I love the way he writes because he writes a lot of youth. That 14, 15, 16-year-old, always in a crisis, always having to come out of something, always having to discover themselves, what's wrong in society, how they could be the heroes and put it right. And it's like, it's always something that I find so intriguing that I love going on the journey with. And, I think if you read when you're young, that wanting to read is going to be something that's going to be with you for forever.
It absolutely is. And I think when you learn to read at school, a lot of the times you equate reading with school, and it's not always as an enjoyable experience as it should be. So if you read at home, it will kind of negate that and allow the kid to think of reading as something fun to do, something that they want to do versus something that they have to do.
Yeah.
And
I think it also sparks the conversation, though. People have book clubs.
Oh, yeah.
So, right. I also have a podcast club, listen to a podcast and have a club and talk about what you've learned. Because I think when we actually share what you got out of the book,
Yes.
right? And even parents with kids, we're reading, The Me Tree right now. What's that about? Oh, I've got to pick up I'm reading this book right now. My kid loves it. And it's the sharing of all the
Yes.
stories and sharing how your kid is reacting to it. You cannot be down and glum when you're talking about that. You are elevated.
Oh, yeah.
My kid is so into this book, and you are so elevated with it that you want to pass the good feelings along.
Yes. Oh, yes. And two, it gives you an opportunity to figure out how other people see what's happening, because like most things in life, everyone's perspectives are going to
Yeah.
be different. So to hear someone's opinions who are unlike yours
Yes.
opens up your mind into these other avenues, and you start to kind of rethink a little bit and like, oh, that's definitely a possibility.
Yeah.
And when kids read books together, there's that same type of experience when you've got, like, I read to a lot of classrooms and I do a lot of school visits and everything. And when we're finished and, with everything, the kids will come up to me and tell me like, oh, I really liked this about your book. And a different kid will come up and say, well, I really liked this about your book. And then some of them will say things like, well, when I was such and such years old, I did something like this. And then
Yeah.
another kid will say that too. And they'll say, oh, I did that same thing.
Yeah.
And it's just a way of
Bringing them together.
yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. It's fabulous. Such
I
a
think
great.
one of the problems we have as society is we're looking at differences and we're not looking at commonalities.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
when we can see the commonalities of how much we are the same, doesn't matter what package we come in, what
Mhm.
skin color or ethnicity or anything else that we come in, when we
Yeah.
see ourselves from the inside out,
Mhm.
then we truly start to really see and relate. But
I agree.
the world and the adults in it, they're all about division. And I'm about inclusion. I'm
Mhm.
about collaboration, that
100%.
cohesiveness. And that comes in from a child having that permission to ask questions.
Mhm.
Because if we don't allow them to ask questions, we're shutting that imagination down. We're telling them their opinion doesn't count, right? And if they're very firm on something, don't correct them. They're very firm on it. You can present maybe a different point of view, right? Because that's showing them that there are other points of view for you to digest, but don't go, oh no, you're wrong. Because from that
Absolutely.
child's point of view, what they're seeing in that from that eye at that age, they're right. Let them be.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that's what is so fun when you share a book, because they can make an observation that has absolutely
Yeah.
nothing to do with the story. And you're like, that's a great point,
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
because for whatever reason, whatever you just read took them
Yeah.
somewhere in their mind. So because they're listening, they hear what you're saying. It's just their mind has referenced something that you don't have experience with, and that's what they want to talk about. And
Yeah.
I love it when that happens, because it is completely off the wall, and you'll see like everybody laugh, which again, I
Yes.
love to get a laugh.
Yes.
So it's a very unique experience in that way, most
We're
definitely.
talking about a laugh. I love the title of this, Poltergeist.
Oh, yes, yes, that's a great book. Oh, I love that
I
one.
mean, that is just, from an adult's perspective, go, whoa, okay.
Oh, yeah.
So do
Oh,
tell us
yeah.
about that book.
Oh, I love a good pun. I just had two books announced, and one of them is called Sheepwrecked. And it's about pirate sheep who get stranded on a desert island, and they're led by the leader, Captain Hoof. And so I love books with puns.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, there are so many opportunities out there for wordplay,
Yes.
from the creative side perspective. When you're working on a picture book, a pun can be a great source of inspiration, and it will allow you to make a fun read aloud.
Right.
And so books like that are so much fun to read aloud, because they allow the kids to laugh just at the words only. Like, they can kind of stand alone at that point if you have a good pun that they'll get. But then when you rope in the pictures and you
Yes.
can show that funny thing happening, oh my gosh, it is a great marriage of content. It is so incredibly funny. And then when I do school visits and everything, and I'm reading these funny words and, fun words that are interesting to say like zoink, bonk,
Yeah.
bah, whatever, and they can like repeat them, then they'll continue to say them throughout the day.
Yes, yes.
There's
and go home and irritate the parents to
Oh,
death by
gosh,
continuously just saying them. Yes.
yes. And I'll get messages from teachers like, we've said bonk 16 times today. Thanks. Like, it's great because those types of things stick with them.
Yeah.
So yeah, using a pun is a great source of inspiration. And again, if you can get that laugh from a kid or an adult, it is the best feeling when you have created something that makes somebody else smile.
Right.
I can't explain what that is like. Whenever I do talk to kids, I'll always ask if they have any questions at the end, or if they have any comments. I'm like, questions, comments, because I care about their opinion. I'm making this book for them and they need to like it. So I asked that one time. I love telling this story. I asked that one time at this school, and this little boy, he kept putting his hand up and then he'd put it back down, and he'd put his hand up again and then he'd put it back down, and he was real shy. So finally, he put his hand up long enough for me to say, okay, what's your question or your comment? And he said, Miss Ashley, you stayed in the line so well. And then he sat back down. I just thought that was the neatest compliment ever. Like, and because he was focused on the art,
Right. Yes.
And so oftentimes, you'll get kids that are focused solely on the story, or you'll get kids who are solely focused on the picture. So again, it's just such a unique experience. Oh.
What comes first for you, the art or the story?
So when I'm working on a book that I'm doing both jobs on, typically I'll kind of ping pong back and forth between the two. Oftentimes I'll get a picture of it. I'll be inspired by a funny pun or a character that I just have an idea for. And I'll draw the character that I'm writing about first, because it's really hard for me to write about someone that I can't see. So I'll have the character sketch in front of me. And once I kind of have an idea of what they look like, then I can kind of take off with the story. And once that stalls, then I'll go back and draw a little bit. And sometimes if I'm drawing a character that I really like, I would think, oh, it would be funny if this character would X, Y, and Z, and draw them in a situation that will then inspire the text. So I'll go back. Right. So yeah, that's how I typically work. Everybody has their own creative process, which is again why this is such a fun business to be in, because no two people really work the same. But that seems to be what really works for me.
How many books have you done thus far?
So I have, I've illustrated Frankenslime and Valenslime, written by Joy Keller, and those came out from Fievel and Friends, which is an imprint of Macmillan. The Me Tree is my first author illustrator book, and that came out from Penguin Workshop last year. So those are the three that I have out right now, but I have several upcoming, which is very exciting. Listen Up Luella will be out on June 21st from Fievel and Friends. And then the follow-up to the Me Tree, which is called A Partridge in the Wee Tree, will be out. It'll be out in October, so it'll be here. It's a Christmas story. And then the two that I mentioned, I just had announced, Sheepwrecked, and the other one is called Witch and Wombat, which is about a little witch who is so excited to get a cat, and she goes to the pet shelter to pick up her cat, and they're all sold out, so she has to take a wombat home instead.
I love it. That is a very good lesson, is that your mind is on one thing, but there's actually something else that needs to have you. You need to have that. And so it is be flexible, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because we don't want people being rigid. We want them to be flexible and adaptable and adoptable, because that's what life is about. It's we want children to learn to kind of really root themselves, have a good strong trunk, but to make sure that their branches can always flap in the wind easily without breaking. And the more we prepare them with that through storytelling, through seeing themselves in stories, for getting permission to have a voice, to have an opinion, to become something. I think there's nothing more joyful than watching a child dress up and become something, whatever superhero or whatever character they are. Even if they go through a dark phase, which some children do, is because of the darkness reflected around them. It's an expression of the voice. We need to listen, right? Because then we can introduce maybe a book that can cover that topic, but with a sense of humor or with a sense of compassion to help them through that. Listen and observe your children.
Absolutely. And a wonderful way to do that is by having these discussions that are sparked from books. Like there's, we could talk all day about, the positive things that can come from reading, but just having that time to connect with nothing else going on and listen, like you said, to what they have to say. Because and the things that you talk about the book, they don't matter to the, to the world. Like it's something fun that will let you know who they are, because it gives you a window into their personality to see what they think about certain things, and vice versa.
That will be what matters to the world.
Yes, that will be what matters.
Yes,
to the world. Absolutely, because it allows them to also form their personalities too.
Yes.
We're all born with a personality. We just have to, kind of fill in the puzzle pieces to figure out what it is. And when you have these discussions about, books and things that are purely for fun, they can have serious repercussions and, great strives towards their future.
I think, there's something so really wonderful of grandparent, aunt, uncle, mother, father, sitting with your child in your arms and reading them a story.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And my bestie that I was talking about was actually a librarian teacher. And she's got a wonderful way of reading stories as well. And she went from being a classroom teacher to a librarian teacher because she loved to read the stories of, of all these adventures and all of the kids, one moment they're a pack of worms, wiggling around everywhere. And the next moment they're just sitting there, eyes and mouths open, just totally entrenched in the story. And it's absolutely wonderful to see.
It is. And it gives you that time to all have an experience together. I think it's so neat when the world comes together for something, like whether it's like New Year's, when you have everybody waiting for midnight, we're all doing that together. And Thanksgiving, we're those who celebrate Thanksgiving, we're all having Thanksgiving. It's something that, it's neat to be part of a group who is
collective.
Yes. And when you read a book with a group of kids, that's what is happening. They're all in this. And to them, that is the world. That is what is happening right now. And that is all that matters. And I think that's, as adults, that's what we miss.
Yes.
Is yes, we get immersed in everything, but then we know that we have to go back. But the kids don't. And that's why it's so fun when you get your hands on a group of kids who are so excited about books and imagination, because they are in it to win it. They are there with you. They are true believers of whatever it is that is happening in that story. They're like, this is happening right now.
But also, there isn't the competitiveness of the one-upmanship. As we get older, there's two words I hate, which is compare and compete. Lead the competing to the support, to sport or to competitions, but not to each other. Do not compare, because we're all uniquely different. We're all beautifully essence of who we are. And when we get to adulthood, instead of looking at the commonalities or looking at the beautiful things out of a story that we should share, that move us, we one up each other or compete with each other, or my pain is bigger than your pain. And and it's like, no, go back and watch your children. Even if everybody wants to be the bear at the end of the story, the thing is, they can know everybody can be the bear at the end of the story. They can be the bear in their own tree, and their tree could be their own bed. Right. And that's the thing, is they learn to share more, and we need as adults to see this reflect back. So again, let's go back and invest in our children when they're young with the stories of humor, of education, of collaboration, of cohesiveness, of community, of love, of self-love, because you can't have community love without self-love. And let's teach them that through the books. And give them that power and that empowerment to step into that beautiful presence. So they are the solution in the future and not a problem like we've become because, you know, society didn't give us a voice as we grew up.
Right. No, there is huge catalyst for change in picture books.
Yeah.
And if I'm able to help that, I am so excited about that. So excited.
Well, as I said, that one book, I don't know how many years later, 28 years later, whatever it is, you know, and how it still made her cry. Right? I mean, that's the thing about a book. It's not just in fashion today and gone tomorrow.
Right.
Right. And that book is a book that carries on giving to generation after generation, and then reminds a generation as an adult reads to their child and carries on giving again. So books are beautiful things. And there's something very beautiful about actually holding a book, turning the page. It's in your hands, it's tangible, the child is on your lap or sitting in front of you, and you're immersed into it, the storytelling. It's good for everybody.
Oh yeah, it is. And oftentimes it really is better for the adult than the kid.
Yes. And if we can level out the adult, you know, like let's have, you know, one of the things I used to do with my kids, if they drove me crazy, I'll start singing opera. And they would do anything to shut me up. So, but the other thing we used to do is put on Queen and sing, you know, we are the champions at the top of our voices, whether we could sing or not. And it was about, let's let it out. You know, I was very much into silly buggers. We've got to be silly buggers. We have to be that as adults as well. There's time for that humor and just to be silly buggers. Because we've forgotten that and we've become so serious and so miserable. And let's have a little humor in our lives, right?
Oh, I could not agree more. And that's why I love that I am able to live my passion as my career, because it is not serious. I mean, I spend, like I was talking about my wombat book, like earlier today, I was drawing a wombat in a pet store. Like that's what I was doing today. Like it's so silly and fun, and just I love getting kind of transported from life into my stories and becoming friends with these characters. And so much so that I'm actually a little bit sad every time I finish a project, if I'm being honest, because it's like, oh man, like I don't get to hang out with my friends anymore, like, and draw them in these.
There can always be a book 2.
Exactly.
The next adventure.
Yes. That is the goal. That is the goal.
Definitely. Well, you know, you look at stories like The Jungle Book. You know, it had cynicism in there. It had abandonment in there. You know, it had a different type of family in there and love, and it had self-discovery in there, and with all the wonderful songs, you know, picking up the tree, scratching his back, you know, and all of it was just had you mesmerized and had you remembering the songs, and for whatever the stage the child is at, there was something in there for them to relate to. And that's the beauty of a book. Don't think, oh, this is too young for my kid, or this is too old for my kid. It could be something you could get an older brother to read to a little sister that says just as much to them as it does to the younger one, right?
Oh yeah, most definitely. That's something too with picture books, because a lot of times, you know, kids grow up and they don't want to carry around these big picture books. They want small, you know, they want smaller books because they want to think that they, you know, that they're big kids and they can read, you know, big kid looking books and everything. But if they have a younger sibling, those kids are on those picture books like nobody's business.
Exactly.
They are back. Yes, they are there. And then when, you know, when you're an adult, then you're like, oh yeah, like I'm an adult now, I can totally buy these picture books, because even if I don't have a kid, somebody will probably think I do. So who
right,
cares?
exactly,
You know?
exactly.
Yeah.
My daughter is 39 and will not be having children, but she absolutely loves being the goofball with my nephew. Absolutely loves it. You know, then the child completely comes out on her. And that's the thing. Let's let our inner child free. We can pick up these books and read them anytime. We don't actually have to have a kid to read them to. How about you get the pleasure out of them, buy every single one of them, and then donate them to a preschool, to a school, to a daycare, you know, to the community center. You know, that's have the pleasure of them, maybe even have the pleasure of actually reading to the children in the daycare or the community center. Let it be your guilty pleasure. Oh, I'm doing it for the kids, you know?
It's all for them. It's for them, totally. I love drawing wombats all day for the kids. It's for them.
And then we realize that how much it bridges the gap, how much it brings us together, how much joy it brings. One of the things from 10 years of doing this podcasting, there's a few things that always recurred, and that is the forgotten child inside of people, how they got so bogged down with the expectations of life, they've forgotten how to be, or have never known how to be who they are, wanting that inner child to come out and play, but forgotten what joy is. Don't know how to be joyful, don't know how to live from the heart. And the other thing is that no matter who you are, how powerful you think you are, everybody goes through a process in life of learning and growing. And if we could nurture our children to go through that process and grow from the youngsters to the adults, they will manage adulthood so much better because they would have the skills.
Absolutely. Yes. And it's laying that great groundwork by fostering a love of imagination at that young age that's going to help.
Absolutely. And it doesn't hurt sparking our imagination that we may have forgotten along the line as well.
Never. No, that's what books are for. They're a healthy reminder.
Yes. Well, what age group are the books for?
So most of the ones that I work on can be read to the littles that are unable to read and don't really know what they're looking at yet. So like a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old will like them because of the bright colors, but they're geared towards kind of the 4 to 9 age range.
Right.
But again, the little ones will like them just because they're
exactly. And again, the more, you know, the immerse, I know that my little Roro, my little grandson, there are certain books that he absolutely loves because mom and dad love reading them.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And because mom and dad like reading them, some of the books, do I have to read this again? And then other the books, oh, let's read this again, you know, and the more they enjoy it, you know, the more the kid is going to get something out of it. Even if, you know, just the joy from the parents, right? So it's never too early to introduce the book, because as they grow older and get to a point where they start understanding the story, or they start recognizing the words, and then they want to read it for themselves, that book's taken that journey with them, which is a wonderful thing as well.
Oh yeah. If one of my books could do that for a kid, that would just, I mean, that would make my career. There is nothing more special than that, in my opinion.
Well, you know, as a grandparent, I buy books. And I think one of the things that we need to look at is that when a kid has a birthday, Christmas, or this or that, we go off to the toy store and everybody fights over the latest toy. That is going to be picked up and put down 5 minutes later. So how about we invest in a library for our kids, giving them books that they can read, that even later on when they're older, you know, 10, 12 or whatever, they don't need them anymore, they will have such an attachment to, that they will want to hand them off or read them off to other children, just like my kids did with certain books. And it becomes something that so close to the heart. It was kind of, do I have to let it go? Can I not hold on to it for my own kids?
Keep it.
But, you know, but building that library, you know, it becomes part of the story, just like we keep photo albums for our children, right? You know, there are various stages in life. The books represent various stages of their growth as well. And when, you know, and as an adult, they come back and they revisit, oh, I remember this, like this one with my daughter, revisit that book. They revisit the feelings they had with that book, but what it means to them now as an adult. And so a book is something that will not be forgotten and can always be on the shelf, and is always something you can turn around and read to anybody at any time. So, you know, yes, those toys are great, but a book is forever.
Oh, it most definitely is. And it is the gift that truly keeps on giving.
It does. It does. It doesn't matter what the age group is, you know, it just keeps on giving. Whoever's reading the story, you're sharing that gift, but you're receiving that gift as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it gives to everybody, and it's always there when you need it. Always.
Yes. And, you know, a good reminder sometimes, you know, even as an adult, you're just feeling down and you just don't know how to get out of this rut. Pick up an old favorite book that you read as a child, and it just kind of resets you, you know, it just
Oh, yeah.
gives you a whole different look on things, and then you just kind of learn to let go.
Yes. Yes. Get yourself lost in there like you used to.
Yeah,
And nothing else than nostalgia will definitely help. Most definitely.
exactly. So how do people buy these books, and how do people reach you?
Well, I have a website. It is very simple. It's my name. It's Ashley Belote, ASHLEYBELOTE.com. My email address is on my website, as well as links to retailers that sell all of my books. They are available anywhere online that books are sold, as well as in bookstores. And if you have an indie bookstore near where you live, I'm a huge supporter of the indie bookstores. And Indie Bookstore Day is actually this coming Saturday. So I'm planning to hit all of my local spots. I love indie bookstores. They are absolutely wonderful, and they are so supportive of the authors around them. So if anytime you can support a local bookstore, I'm all about it. But I know that's not always possible. You don't always have people who live near the bookstores, but that's why online shopping is also great. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, and you've got IndieBound, you've got Bookshop, you've got Amazon. I've got all of
Yes.
your books here on the show posting. So you know, they can just even you come to selfdiscoverymedia.com and put in your name, Ashley Belote in the search engine, and your show will come up with ways to listen, and also how to find all of your books. And you know, as I said, this, if you don't know what do I give them, I have no idea what to buy. Books, books, books. You'll never go wrong with books, with a good story. It's a gift to the parents who have to read it and don't want to read the same book 20 million times, and it's a gift to the child, and it's a gift that keeps on giving. Right. So yes, books, books, books. And there is something about a guilty pleasure of reading a child's book and getting a lot out of it yourself.
Fine, there's worse things you could do.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. And I think as a society, we do need to lighten up. You know,
Yes.
we've got so much seriousness around us. We've got so much pain and anguish around us. And that sometimes just that escapism into some wonderment, into a different world. You know, I think this is the reason my brother went from kind of, you know, very thriller type, and which he still writes, but then why he went into the youth genre, because he could go into other worlds, you know, of that escapism, which I love. So I love all of the books there. And although they're kind of written for youth, it's, you always see something of yourself in them. And I think that's a good book, is when you see something that relates back to you, no matter what age group it's for.
Yes, and a good creator can make a book do that for anybody. So
And you know, Dimitri, yeah, I want some solitude. I want to kind of just live on my own and go to the beach of my old drum. Well, that was me, and I ended up living with an 88-year-old.
Oh my
And it's like, you know, it was meant to be, right?
God.
So, you know, hear me wanting the solitude, but I was sent where I was meant to be, right?
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
so sometimes it's just, you know, just go with it.
Yes.
Just go with it. And I think that's a really good lesson for people to learn. There's always a benefit to it if you choose to see the benefit.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And in Bear's case, you know, it does end well, and he learns that what he wanted isn't actually what he needed.
Right.
So,
yeah. Yeah. You know, there's always lessons to be learned in life. And I think this is the most important lesson of all, is to know that you've got lessons to learn in life.
yes, nobody knows everything, and we all have things to learn.
and you're going to be learning to the day you die.
Oh, yes.
Right, until the day this vessel calls it quits, but your spirit carries on. And the more that you're willing to live in wonderment and to live in exploration and always, you know, in discovery, that it is, life is so much to it that it's always a good reason to stick around to what else is out there.
Yes. Oh, yes. And books can take you there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A wonderful, they're not escapism, they're just a beautiful, they're a different form of journeying.
Yes.
Absolutely. So get your kids these little books, even if you don't have kids yet, but plan to have them, start building the library.
Yeah.
If you have nieces and nephews and you want to be a popular aunt or uncle, get them the books and read it to them, right? Grandparents, these are books that you can really dive into and be full of wacky expression with them. It doesn't matter who you are or where you are. I would suggest even these type of things are great to have at hospitals and police stations and things like this, places that could be terrifying for kids. And to have a book that somebody can just sit down and read with a child to less intimidate their surroundings. So, these are the kind of books that we want someone to sit down and read to a kid that maybe is going through something that they shouldn't be going through. So let's take them into a different world where they can escape where they're at right now, but also keep the belief that this is a beautiful world and we are all beautiful in it, because that's something people lose as they grow up, and we don't want our children to lose that.
Never, never. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for sharing with us here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really, really enjoyed it, and I am so passionate about what I do. So anytime I have the opportunity to share it, it's lovely. So thank you.
No, I'm right with you with the passion. So it's Ashley Belote, BOLTE.com. Go there, everything is there. And please get these books, even if you don't have any kids on the horizon. There's a daycare near you, there's a community center, that, just places you can, the dentist, right? There's lots of places you can donate these books to. So don't use the excuse, well, I don't have kids yet. You are a kid inside of you. Have the pleasure of reading them, passing them on, or even going to read them at different places, right? So you could be of service by just going to read. Children's hospitals, kids that are in care there, give the parent a break, go and read to these kids and lift them up, give them some hope. There is always a way that you can participate. So thank you so much, Ashley.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Until next time, folks, remember, reading opens up your world. Bye for now.